Mount the regulator set to a tank containing 500 psi. A 500 psi tank is used with a diaphragm first stage because the highest intermediate pressure is provided at the lowest tank pressure. Using a full tank for tuning instead risks a second stage free flow, as IP will rise further when the tank empties on a subsequent dive. With a finger lightly on the purge button, slowly open the tank valve while watching the IP gauge. If it rises above 120 psi, immediately turn off the tank before releasing the purge button, as the second stage acts as a safety valve. In that case, unscrew the spring adjust one full turn and try again. We will now pressurize this regulator. As the IP did not exceed 120, I released the purge button and allowed the IP to stabilize. Watch the IP for 1 minute. If it drifts and then locks up, that's common and acceptable with the new seat. If the IP continues to rise without stopping, IP creep is an out-of-specification condition necessitating first stage disassembly and inspection. With the IP stabilized below 135 psi, breathe or cycle the regulator 50 times to improve the mating surface between the volcano and the high-pressure seat face. Now, using the 6mm hex key, adjust the IP by turning clockwise in small increments and purging in between adjustments. You may see an excessive IP rise with a small turn as the spring winds up. That will disappear with a purge. Use smaller and smaller increments as you approach 135 psi. With a stable IP at 135 psi, depressurize the tank completely. Upon repressurization, it is common that IP will not return to where you adjusted it before due to spring windup. Adjust slightly until you have a stable intermediate pressure at 135 psi. We will now move to a 3000 psi tank and check the change in intermediate pressure. With the regulator attached to a 3000 psi tank, pressurization commonly results in an IP slightly lower than that obtained at 500 psi. Acceptable variations range from 2 to 10 psi below that obtained with a near-empty tank. This is within specification. We will now seal the regulator and complete our service. The transmitter is dropped in place. The environmental cap is assembled by applying the environmental seal to the inside, with the glossy side up. Lightly lubricating the threads on the regulator body, screw the environmental cap in place, applying slight pressure to make sure that the environmental seal is applied to the transmitter. This may result in a small increase in intermediate pressure, which is normal. Now, depressurize the regulator and confirm that the environmental seal assumes a concave shape. Repressurize the regulator and confirm that your intermediate pressure is as you previously adjusted it, accounting for the higher tank pressure. Leave the regulator pressurized anywhere from 2 to 12 hours and confirm that there is no IP creep. This completes reassembly and tuning of the Dive Gear Express Gears D6 first stage. Dive Gear Express videos are made available for educational purposes only, to provide general understanding of scuba diving related topics and not to provide specific advice. please read the essential information page at the URL shown.